Alexander County Veteran Service Officer, and today I'm with Gary Walker. Gary, tell me a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, the community where you live.
Well, I was born 4/2/52 a while back, and I was born in Iredell County, but I lived in Alexander County, and I've lived here all my life.
Okay, which community do you live in?
Now I live in the Ellendale community.
Okay. What did you do prior to joining the military?
Well, actually, I was in high school.
Okay.
And I graduated from high school. And so I graduated like in June, and I signed up for the Army Reserves. And in December, I was sworn in the Army Reserve, so I was 18 years old and still a young man.
Okay. How did you feel about the military at that time?
I wanted to serve some way my country, and the United States Army Reserve seemed like to be the best route for me. I hadn't got a draft number yet, so I didn't know what that was, but me and my dad was in business together, so I thought this was a way that I could serve my country and still maybe help Dad with the family business.
Right. So you actually volunteered, you weren't drafted?
Yes, I volunteered.
Okay. And what was your branch of service?
It was United States Army Reserves.
Okay.
When I signed up there, I had to sign up for 6 years.
Okay. Do you remember your unit?
Yeah, it was the 108th Division, and that covered, and we were a infantry training unit, and that covered South Carolina, Virginia, and North Carolina.
Okay. What was your highest rank?
Sergeant First Class.
Okay. How long did you serve? Did the total of 6 years?
No, I served my 6 years, and then I re-upped for another year, and then I re-upped for another year, and I would have probably stayed in 20 years in reserves, but my dad had health problems. He had a heart attack, so it was going to be hard for me to continue in that because of our business.
Right, right. So did you serve overseas or stateside or both?
It was all stateside.
Okay.
I went into basic training. After basic training, I had a 2-week leave, came home, went to 2 weeks leadership school, and then infantry AIT of 9 weeks, and I was a squad leader there. And then after that, they sent me to drill sergeant school in Fort Ord, California.
Okay.
And I was in Washington State for my basic training up there.
Okay. What did you envision the military would be like when you joined?
Well, you know, you look at movies and all this stuff, you know. So at my unit, you know, they could tell me a little bit, and we went through some things, drilling ceremonies and stuff like that. So I had a little bit of background instead of just being green getting in there. So I had a little bit of envision of it, but nothing prepared me for what the reality was, especially an 18-year-old kid.
So your basic training, you said, was in Washington?
Yeah, Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay. Do you remember anything about basic training? Were you nervous, scared, excited?
Oh, yes. Because when I never had been on a plane. I got on a plane to Hickory and flew to Atlanta and then to Dallas and Seattle, Washington. And when we rolled in, the first thing I saw when I got to Fort Lewis, of course, Vietnam was hot and heavy at that time, was a bunch of guys in jungle fatigues. And so I didn't know what to expect in basic training. I'd heard a lot of things, but I just took it a day at a time.
Now, did you leave from here and go by yourself, or did you have a friend to go with you? Or?
No, I was by myself, and I've told people I felt like a little grain of sand in the whole world.
Right.
Because I'd never been away from home or anything like that, so I had to grow up pretty fast.
Right. Do you remember any of your drill instructors, and if you do, what stands out about them?
Well, the drill instructor I had in basic training, he was from Arkansas. I still remember that, and Sergeant Barnett. And he was about 6'4", and he could run forever. Except the great thing about that is I could run too. But he would run some of those guys in the ground, but there was a lot of PT and physical training, and he was very good at that. So, but he was fair, but you know, he expected you to do your job.
Right. Did you make friends while you were in the military, and do you still keep in touch with them?
I did. I met a guy. He was in the Concord unit, and he was from Troutman. And so I'd only gotten married a month and a half before I went into basic. And so I don't know how long he'd been married, but he had a bride back in Troutman. So when we had 2-week leave, before we came on our 2-week leave, we looked for an apartment. We was going to take our wives back.
Right.
So that's what we did. So when we got back, we had that 2 weeks leadership school, and then we had 9 weeks infantry training. But we had more time off on weekends and things like that, that we could spend time, you know, with our wives. We got us an apartment out there to spend time, you know, when we was off base.
Well, that's good. What did you think of your officers?
You know, officers were, most of them were pretty sharp, you know, and they were fair, but you know, I didn't see as much as the officers as I did, you know, the drill instructors.
Right.
And I guess the drill instructors and people like that probably impressed me more because they were out there doing, really seemed like, I know the officers didn't work too, but they seemed like they were doing all the nasty work.
Right. Well, the military cannot run without the enlisted folks.
Well, I mean, it takes it all.
It does.
It takes it all.
So you were a drill instructor the entire time you were in?
Well, when I went into basic and 2 weeks leadership school, infantry training, then I went to 6 weeks drill sergeant school, and it was regular Army drill sergeant school at Fort Ord, California. And we started out, and that was a challenge for me because, believe it or not, I talk a whole lot more now than I did when I came out of high school, because I was that kid that didn't want to give the book report.
Right.
And so we went to drill sergeant school, and there we started out with 39 cadets, and they give you 100 points, but it was very hard. It was very easy to lose points.
Right.
Very hard to gain points. And when I was in infantry AIT, I bought me a pair of jump boots, and I'm sure you know what that is. And every time I got a chance at the department, I would spit shine those boots. So you could, you know, comb your hair or something with my boots. But you know, when we got in formation, you know, making sure all the strings were cut and everything was lined up, all the insignias was right, because if they wasn't just right, they'd get you demerits. And so we had guys, you know, they may be in there 2 weeks and they're gone. I mean, they drop below 70 points, they're gone. We even had 2 with less than 2 weeks to go.
Oh, man.
Gone. So I think I ended up with about 86 points. So, and then getting up in front of people, and you know, being in the military, you know, when you're given some classes out here, you can sort of ad-lib. But military, it's no ad-lib, it's by the numbers.
Right.
But my TAC officer told me something that really, really helped me, and he said, if you know your material, it takes away a lot of the nervousness.
Right.
So I probably studied more in that 6 weeks than I did in high school. Because we had an apartment there at Fort Ord, and because we didn't stay on base. And man, I'd get the manuals out and I'd study, and one thing about, you know, standing in front of military is eye contact and not mannerisms and all this, anything that would distract from the attention. So that's something I had to learn, you know. So I really studied, I knew the material, so it really did take away a lot of the nervousness, you know, standing up. When you're standing up against, in front of other cadets and all these other drill sergeants that's in charge of you, it was pretty nerve-wracking.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
So I was really pleased and proud of the day of graduation. I think we ended up with 21 graduating, and when they put that drill sergeant hat on you, you know, and so that was a great accomplishment at that time for me.
Yeah. What was your most memorable experience?
Probably the most memorable is at the time you might not be enjoying basic training and infantry training and all that, but just working with the different weapons and infantry AIT, your more advanced weapons, and going out living in the field for a week, and helicopters coming in, and everything at that time was geared to Vietnam.
Right.
Jungle training and all the things that people had to face in Vietnam. I didn't have to go there, but I felt like if I went there, I was well prepared to go because of the training that I had. So a lot of the training, I think, still stands out in my mind.
Did you have any close calls or hairy situations in your training exercises?
Probably the most nerve-wracking time was when I was actually a drill sergeant, and we was at Fort Jackson. And so you got about 100 men on the firing range, and you know they say cease fire, you cease fire.
Right.
And so we carried paddles. Red means the firing line's not clear, and white it means it's clear. So thought everything's clear, and we take a rod and make sure the weapon's clear, you know. And I take about a step from this one trainee, and bam, a round goes off, and that time I sort of lost it, and I took that metal paddle and hit him across the helmet with it, about knocked him out. But he paid for that one. He paid for that. But that was, I mean, you know, if I'd have put my hand there and he'd have fired it, you know, it'd probably blown my hand off. But,
Right.
you know, I wasn't in combat situations, so, but that was pretty nerve-wracking there.
Well, some rough things can happen in training too.
Yeah, M16, I know when I was a trainee, they showed the demonstration. They'd have an ammo box, and it was full of water. And a guy came, he didn't tell us he was going to do it, and about that time he fired at that ammo box. And so when it goes through, it goes a neat little hole. Comes out the other side, it rips it apart.
Right.
So it can do, the M16 round can do some damage.
Right, right. What weapons were you assigned to?
Well, we worked with all kinds of weapons. I guess I wasn't really assigned to any particular weapon, but I had to have a knowledge in all the weapons because a drill sergeant, he's got to know everything from A to Z, from weapons to all the drill and ceremonies. I know when we bring the troops in of afternoon, a lot of times we'd have reinforcement training, and if training asks you something, you got to know it.
Right.
So you had to know a lot being a drill instructor.
Right. Was the food good? Did you have enough to eat, or?
Well, in basic training, they about fed you enough to keep you alive. And before I got out, we were training some down at Fort Jackson. They had put up new barracks, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing because it was almost like going to Cold Corral. And but when I was I never got my eggs over easy. But sometimes you'd have a choice and sometimes you wouldn't. But when you either eat or you're going to starve, you eat.
Right.
So I had to adjust to stuff like that. But yeah, some of the food was okay. But what I saw at the end of my service looked like I was getting fed a lot better.
Oh, so do you still like over easy eggs?
No. Give me scrambled.
Okay, I agree. You've kind of told a little bit about what everyday life was like, but just kind of take us from, you know, when you got up to the day was over.
Well, you're talking about basic training, maybe? Okay. Well, basic training, I mean, you'd maybe get up either from 4 to 5, it's according to what you're going to do that day. And then sometimes you'd have fire guard. You'd be assigned a certain hour of the early morning or night, and you'd have to make sure, you know, nothing was taking place in the barracks. And then sometimes you'd have KP, so that started early in the morning and late at night. And I was fortunate enough to only have that once in basic training. But we'd go out into the field. We had different kinds of training. Sometimes it was in classrooms, sometimes it was out on rifle range, grenade range, things like that. So to me, it was interesting. But I guess the biggest thing was the pressure on you, you know, just pushing you all the time and the discipline. But you adjust.
Right. If you don't, you get to go home.
Yeah, if you don't adjust, you wish you had.
So I know at basic training you were probably in the barracks, but when you were out on like at field training, did you sleep in tents? Did you have a pup tent? Were y'all in one big together, or? Yeah,
we had what we call shelter halves.
Okay.
And one trainee would have one shelter half, another trainee would have another shelter half. So we'd have to set that up. Of course, we'd usually dig a trench. We had an entrenching tool. We'd dig a trench around the tent, so if it rained, which it usually did when you was out
Right.
in the field, that the water would, you know, that would catch the water and maybe try to dig a trench down somewhere and up to another guy's tent.
Right.
And
Yeah, that wouldn't be
then
too
we'd
good.
have to sleep with our weapon because you didn't just leave your weapon laying around or you would pay.
Right.
So you slept with that weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So most time I had it under me. I didn't want it beside on me because sometimes drill sergeant would try to come around, and if he seen the weapon there, you know, if the enemy could get it, or if he can get it, the enemy could get it.
Right.
So that was your protection.
Okay. How'd you keep in touch with people back home?
Well, that was through letters,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember a lot of people sent me letters, and I was blessed with that. And you know, I remember around my birthday, I was in basic, and my birthday just started basic.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom sent me a big thing of cookies, you know, and stuff. But they'd, you know, they'd have mail call, and you know, you'd be in formation, and they'd call your name. You'd run up there and get your letter and come back. And so they just called my name a lot. And I remember Drill Sergeant Barnett said, "Too much mail, Walker. Too much mail." But I was blessed with a lot of mail. And then, of course, my wife, when I was in basic, she was back here, so I tried to write her every day, and she'd write me, and try to stay in touch. And we couldn't communicate with the phone
Right.
except on the weekend, and most of the time, anytime we left the barracks is on a double time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd stand in line at the payphone, usually on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and get your chance. You had about 3 to 5 minutes to talk, and that was it.
Oh, mercy.
So,
So were you homesick or?
well, yes, I was homesick, but I wasn't so terribly homesick because they kept you so busy,
Right.
and you had to be focused on what you was doing. So I think that took away some of it. Now, when I got on down about, there was 8 weeks of basic training. Well, we were there like 0 weeks, so I was actually there about 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it got down to about the last 2 weeks, I was really looking forward to getting on a plane and getting home.
Right. No fear of flying then.
No. I don't.
What did you do for fun or during your leave time? Did you tour places that you were, or?
Well, when I came home a 2-week leave, you would think I would have had easy time, but we lived on a farm, and so that was hay time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I was here getting up hay and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, and me and my wife spend time doing some things. But then when I took her back out there,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were there, you know, close to Seattle. It was about 45 miles. So we went in, I know the other couple, they had an anniversary, and we went into Seattle, went up to Space Needle, and it was just as it's getting dusk there in Seattle, and you had Mount Rainier in the background, and, and you know, remember that. And then over the 4th of July, where we had purchased a little car, a Pontiac Tempest that we gave $200 for, and it's more like checking the gas and fill up with oil. Now, that's the truth. And anyway, we drove that thing up to Mount Rainier National Park, and over the 4th of July, and so we got to see some things. And then we drove from Fort Lewis down to California, through Oregon and California, and we got in Oregon, and the car blew up.
Oh dear.
So we had to get out and try to find another car. And so we went out and found us a Rambler station wagon, 63 Rambler station wagon. But it's a real nice vehicle, and they wanted $800 for it. And so we didn't have that kind of money to spend on it. And we had to have some money when we got to Fort Ord.
Mm-hmm.
And so we told them all we had was $300 and to spend on a car. And so we had our uniform on, and so the guy said, "Let me take the $300 and go in here and talk to the manager about your situation." They came back and they let us have the car. So we drove on down with the with the Rambler station wagon.
Well, that's good. That they were
So we had some
willing to
excitement.
help. Yeah, I bet. Did you receive any awards or decorations for your time?
Nothing, you know, just I was able to get ranked pretty quickly. I tried to do my job, And so when you come out of drill sergeant school, coming out of infantry IT, I was PFC. And then when you graduated from drill sergeant school, you had to be a buck sergeant. I mean, well, you had to be a corporal, but you wore the buck's sergeant stripes.
Right.
And so it was just a matter of time that they would promote you to buck sergeant. And so we got back to our to reserve unit and everything, and I was able to get the rank of sergeant first class in 4 years and 2 months, about the fastest anybody had there. And they made me a platoon sergeant. So when we went to active duty for Jackson most of the time, I was in charge of a platoon. So I was pleased with being able to do that.
Right. Very good. Do you still have any of your uniforms or photos or mementos of your time in service?
Yeah, I do. Of course, I've got my drill sergeant hat, and I've got some dress greens that's hanging in the closet. My grandchildren, I've got 8 grandsons, so they like that military stuff, and one dressed up at Halloween a few years ago and wore my dress greens with the sergeant first class stripes and all, you know, and my drill sergeant hat on, so he thought he was a big one.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've still got some of that.
Okay, what was life like after you got out of the military?
Well, in my situation, after I was in active duty after drill sergeant school about 7.5 months, came back to my reserve unit. And so 2 weeks out of the summer, we would go most time Fort Jackson. One time we went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and trained down there. And one thing I really liked about my unit is all the guys there, they took pride. I have to say I've seen some reserve units that looked almost like trainees, and our uniforms and the way we carried ourselves was professional. And when the regular Army drill sergeants, after we were there a day, and they would like to have some time off, but you're taking charge of their platoon.
Right.
And that reflects on them at the end of the cycle. So they just didn't want to turn it over to anybody.
Right.
But they were glad to have the break because they seen we knew what we were talking about, and we went in there and took over, and that was pleasing to know that they had confidence in us.
Right. And you said you got married while you were in basic training?
No, I got married
before?
I got married like in February, and February the 6th, and I left to go to basic training March 23rd.
Oh, mercy. So you really were a newlywed.
Yeah.
Now, do you have children?
Yeah, I do. I have 3 children. My oldest son, Daniel, and my youngest son, Nathan, and my daughter, Lydia. And they're all married. And I've got 8 grandsons, so a lot of things have happened through the years. So
no granddaughters?
Nope.
Oh, mercy.
And the oldest grandson, he just got his license, and then when the youngest one, I just left him a while ago. He's 3.5. So we have a range there.
Oh yeah, never a dull moment.
Yeah.
What has your occupation been since leaving the military?
Well, me and my dad, we were in the plumbing business, and when I came back, he had a lot of things going on. We had a lot of things going on when I went in, and came back, and me and him worked hand in hand for years, and then he's passed away in '98, and but really in the early '90s I took it over. Right. And because he's retired, and so my oldest son, he's also plumbing also now, so it's sort of a 3rd generation business.
Very good, very good. Are you active, or do you belong to any of the veterans organizations in the county?
No, I really haven't looked into that. I've just been so busy raising a family and coaching, and well, of course I'm a runner and busy with that also, so it's hard to seem like put enough time into everything.
Right, I understand that. Now, were any of your family members or ancestors in the military?
I've got some uncles that were in the Navy and Air Force and the Army. My dad, when they was classifying him for the military, he had actually moved to Newport News, Virginia, and that's sort of a story why he got into plumbing. And he went and worked in the shipyard up in Newport News, Virginia. and they put him into pipe fitting.
Mm-hmm.
But they would classify him, and then they'd bump him up to about when he maybe gonna have to go.
Right.
But they had my oldest sister was born, and so that knocked his back down, and he's still working in the shipyard. And then eventually they kept coming. Even if you had a child, they bumped you back up to like 1A. They used to call 1A. And but then the war got over. So, but he worked up there in the shipyard, so he got into pipe fitting up there, and then came back to Kannapolis actually. Worked for a big plumbing company in Charlotte, and so then he came and started the business here. So that's how I'm here.
Okay, very good. What would you say to the youth today that were interested in the military?
Oh, I think it's an honor to serve your country, and if that's what they want to do, I mean, no more honorable thing to do.
Right.
I don't know somebody that wants to go to the military, and I know some young men and women that's in the military now, and I'm proud of them. I was always proud to put on the uniform when I was in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Do you have anything else you'd like to say or to share?
Well, I'm proud to serve my country, and you know, we just got through Memorial Day, and I didn't have to give my life, but for those that did, I know it's a great sacrifice.
Right.
And sometimes I feel like I hadn't done anything when I look at the ones that lost their life, or family that lost their loved ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's-
Well, thank you very much for
Okay.
talking
Well,
to
thanks
us, and
for
thank
having
you
me.
for your service.
All right. Appreciate it.
Okay.